This video is for entertainment purposes only. None of the information you're about to hear should be considered medical advice, and you should always consult a licensed medical practitioner before embarking on a health or lifestyle change. Okay, well, why don't we we can start, wherever you want to, get to know Paul a little bit better. I've known you for quite a while in the YouTube world kind of thing, between Two Crazy Ketos and Shelly and Heath and all the community. I've known of you, and we've talked on in live chats and stuff like that quite a bit. And then you reached out to me when I was looking to have guests on the podcast here. So why don't we sort of get to know you a bit better, and sort of what led you to being part of the keto low carb community in the first place.
Sure. Okay, so do you want me to start right from the beginning with?
Sure. Yeah. Wherever you want to start, wherever you think can be helpful with the audience.
All right. Well, again, like I was saying, pretty much I've been healthy my whole life. The only caveats were I had 4 sports injuries and surgeries, 2 knee surgeries within a year of each other, 2 shoulder surgeries within 3 years of each other. So that's the life of an athlete. You're always going to get injured, and you're always going to, might have to have a surgery to go along with that kind of thing. It was the 4th injury / surgery that I knew something was wrong right when I woke up in the recovery room. I had never been in that kind of pain. It was my right shoulder, and I had never been in that kind of pain from the 3 surgeries prior. So I knew something was wrong, but whatever. I had recovered and rehabbed very, very quickly ahead of all my protocols. And I got back into competing in beach volleyball well ahead of the protocol with the orthopedic surgeon. Bless him. He's like, "You're fine. You rehabbed great. Ready to go." This one, however, it got so bad to the point where I had to take painkillers, and that was something I never had to take prior. So yeah, the whole entire journey to rehab, journey to recovery, I knew something was going on. Well, once I got healthy enough, I started noticing some changes in my health. First off, super thirsty and going to the bathroom all the time. Now, because I was on those painkillers, I thought, and I had also gained weight from the painkillers. So I thought a combination of all that was the reason why I was so thirsty all the time. The painkillers, the weight gain, I was just trying to flush my body with the toxins that were in my body. I was trying to flush them out. That's why my body was craving water, because I was drinking so much water. I was having to pee. Okay, fine. What happened about 2 years down the line, I was eating like a horse. And one day I looked in the mirror and I was skin and bones. I just didn't realize it until somebody brought it up to me. When I took a look in the mirror, and I was just like, "Oh my God, I can see my rib cage." That's before. So I went to my primary care. And again, this was 2 years of being symptomatic. Primary care did pretty much every diagnosis under the book. I was diagnosed with vertigo. I was diagnosed with a parasite. I had just gotten back from Australia not too long ago. They thought I caught a parasite. That's why I lost all this weight. I was diagnosed with 2 different types of viruses. Names escape me right now. 6 months later, they finally did a blood sugar test on me. And a fasting blood sugar, my blood sugar was 445. They didn't do, did they do an A1C? I think they did do an A1C that first time around. And I was 14.4. And I was misdiagnosed as having type 2. And I didn't fit what I thought was the profile of type 2. I was like, wait a minute, how can I be type 2 when, and I don't mean this to sound cavalier or anything when I say this, but type 2 is insulin resistance, and I wasn't doing anything to lead a life of insulin resistance. I wasn't eating unhealthy. I was very active. Um, just all the things that what I thought I knew about type 2. I didn't fit that kind of profile in my mind, but I just went with it because I didn't have a medical degree. So basically, I was told to go on metformin, just like everybody does. Try to limit my carbohydrates, my sugar, and try to get some exercise in. Well, I had no stamina left. The year prior, when I was at my worst, I was starting beach volleyball tournaments and I couldn't even finish them because I just had no energy to do them. So when he's like, try to get some exercise, and I'm like, exercise isn't foreign to me, but I can't even walk up a steep hill on the road without getting winded. So this is getting crazy. Well, 6 months down the line of taking the metformin, trying to reduce my carbs as much as possible, trying to get as much movement in as possible. I had no stamina to lift weights. That's when I knew I was really sick, was when I couldn't even go to the gym and do anything. The PCP finally sent me to an endocrinologist. I walk into an endocrinologist's office. She introduces herself, takes one look at me, and says, "You need to go to the emergency room, and I'm calling them right now to tell them you're coming." I'm like, so me being all like, "What are you talking about? I don't need to go to the emergency room." "No, you need to go to the emergency room because you are type 1 diabetic." She didn't, not even a test or anything. She just looked at me and said, "You're type 1 diabetic." And so me being the belligerent athlete, I'm like, I can do this. I don't need to go to the emergency room. We're good. That's when she was like, "I'm trying to save your life." And now I'm like, well, now you're just being melodramatic. Okay. So I finally went to the emergency room, and, once I realized that she was dead on serious, and I had the GAD antibodies test on GAD and the C-peptide, and was diagnosed that night with type 1. So the next morning, I got the bad news of, you'll have to be on insulin the rest of your life, injections, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards that go with that. In the back of my mind, all I could think of was the same thing that I always thought with my injuries and surgeries: how soon could I get back to competing in beach volleyball, or was this the end of my career? I had a 34-year career up to that point with 39 wins over my time. It was like, this was a moneymaker for me. I could not all of a sudden just stop doing this. So once I got into the emergency room and they admitted me and got me on an insulin drip and all that stuff, the next morning I went back to the endocrinologist's office. She kind of spelled it all out for me as far as what was going to be needing to be done the rest of my life and that kind of thing. So I started off on injections with insulin pens, and they weren't really having a huge effect on me. And then 2 months later, a pump was suggested, and I looked through the different pumps that were out there, and I saw a model that didn't have tubes connected to it. You just put it on your body. It's almost like a CGM. You put it on your body, and it sticks right to you, and then you change it every 3 days, fill it with insulin, and change it every 3 days. I'm like, okay, I think I could do that because it'll work with my sports if I ever decide to get back into sports. And I saw some good things about it with some of the groups that I had joined with diabetic online community. So that's why I got started with keto, or low carb at the time. This was back in 2014. My first introduction into low carb was back in 1998. One of the girls on the professional tour, she and I were talking after the season, and we were talking going into the holiday, and I was like, yeah, here's the challenge: not to put on that 10 pounds before next season and have to take it off at the start of the season. She's like, well, I've been reading about this low carb diet thing, and I think that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she was kind of doing a, Cliff Note version for me. And I was like, that sounds pretty interesting. I kind of heard rumblings about it. I didn't really explore it or anything, but I'm like, yeah, okay, how hard could it be? You don't eat carbs and whatever. I'm good with that. I'm not a big sweet tooth anyways. So, but then I found out it was like, no potatoes, no stuffing, no, none of the savory stuff that I liked. I'm like, for 3 months, 4 months, I can deal with it. So that was my first venture into it. So fast forward to 2014, when I was misdiagnosed as type 2, a friend of mine had reached out to me and introduced me to a Facebook community full of type 2 diabetics that were incorporating low carb diets into their world. And I was like, I'd done this before. I never really thought to give this another whirl. Let me go in and see what they got to offer here. What they were doing, they were all following the instruction of this guy named Dr. Richard Bernstein. And he is the guru for type 1 diabetes and low carb diets. He is a type 1 diabetic himself. He has followed low carb since probably the 50s or 60s, if I remember correctly. And he had been teaching it to, several people in these groups that were on Facebook. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, this type 2 community wasn't really giving me what I needed. It wasn't giving me the education I needed, because they were all talking about putting their type 2 into remission, reversing the symptoms of it. Type 1, there is no cure for. I am type 1 the rest of my life. So one of the admins in the group, R.D. Dykeman, he ran this group called Type 1 Grit. And that was the number one group that followed Dr. Bernstein's protocols of low carb and type 1s. So he invited me to join the group, and I did. And I learned so much from Dr. Bernstein, not just of how to cover your carbohydrates that you do eat with the insulin, meaning the low starch, low carb vegetables kind of thing. But he also taught me something that to this day I have never heard another doctor talk about, and that's how to dose insulin for protein. And if I did not get that knowledge, I would be having high blood sugars left and right without understanding why. With type 1, because of gluconeogenesis, we have to dose insulin in timely amounts to cover protein needs. Mm-hmm. So that was something that I really had to learn. I figured out dosing for the carbs that I was eating and that, the vegetables and that kind of thing, but protein was quite a while. It was about 6 months before I got that down, and I had to use my pump and use all the advantages that came with that pump to be able to keep my blood sugars at a normal level. So within the first year of being on the pump, getting the CGM and all the, group interactions that I had, I was able to get my A1C down from 14.4 to 5.1. After 6 months, so that would be 18 months after the fact, I was down to 4.7. And to this day, that was in 2014, 15, about the beginning of 16. From middle of 2016 to my last A1C test, I have been between 4.5 and 4.9 the whole time. So, and that's incorporating the ketogenic diet, low carb, high fat, whatever you want to call it, my insulin dosing, and getting back into my sports and learning how to adjust all my insulin levels according to that. So.
Yeah, no, that's quite the journey, and I can imagine how going through one diagnosis and then thinking, okay, well, this I can completely understand where you're coming from with, if you get diagnosed as type 2 and you knew enough about health, obviously, to know sort of what the symptoms of type 2 diabetes look like. People with type 2 diabetes, you're right, it's the insulin resistance that brings it on, and it's usually not 100% never, but not usually people that are fairly active and healthy overall that would wind up with that. So I could imagine how crazy that would be to go through that, and then walking into an endocrinologist's office and finding out just by her looking at you that what you've been told so far was wrong completely. So, But yeah, it's these are the kind of stories that I love to hear, because we do hear a lot about reversing type 2 diabetes in the community, right? Because there's been a lot
Right.
of people that have done it. I I feel blessed that I never got to that point. I was probably pre-diabetic before I switched to keto, but I didn't have any symptoms or anything. But the number of people that I've gotten to know in the community that have reversed type 2 diabetes, it's a common thing these days, right? But
Right.
to hear the stories of how you can manage, like you say, you're never going to reverse or cure type 1, but you can manage it
Mhm.
with the medications and the proper diet to go along with it.
Right. And the thing about it is, and I don't like to burst anybody's bubble when it comes to this, because it's a journey for them just like it is me. But I want people to be careful when they say that they cured their type 2,
Mm-hmm.
because type 2 is also not curable. You're always going to have it. It's a matter of putting it into remission, getting it on the back
Right.
burner, and keeping with what you're doing to keep that at bay.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's just words, but I mean, it's important words.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. I did misspeak there, because once it is
Not
something
you.
that's always going to be there. Like it's so easy to. You're right. You can manage it and put it into remission to the point where you don't need the medication anymore. But it's always there in the background and ready to come back if you don't, carefully watch what you're doing as far as your diet and lifestyle goes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't you that said cure. It's just I wanted to put it out there because I do
Hmm.
see that a lot in the communities. Um, people saying they cured their type 2. Well, no, you didn't. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you need to know
Hmm.
this.
Sure, sure. But yeah, the one, like, at least we do know now that it's not if you do the right things with type 2, it's not a diagnosis of, well, you're going to have to take medication for it for the rest
Right.
of your life, right?
Right.
Your story is obviously, different, and that's where the where the information is great for the community to know, because I still think that there's a lot of people out there that feel, okay, well, they've been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, there's nothing I can do about it but take medication.
Right.
And obviously it can't be put into remission, it can't be cured, but it can be. There's lots of other stories. There's a professional hockey player in the NHL right now that's type 1 as well.
Mhm.
He's gone through, he went all the way through junior hockey and all that. So, like, he's playing at the highest level of sports and still managing type 1 diabetes with the proper diet.
Right. Jay Cutler is his name. Jay, the
Mm-hmm.
baseball player. I can't think of his name. He's married to the actress. Um, anyway, he's type 1, and everybody knows him as that. Chris Freeman, who's a an Olympic skier, now a triathlete, he's type 1. He's like, when I was first diagnosed, I joined a type 1 athletes group that I just happened to find while searching. And it's a group that basically very high level athletes, and I've made some really good friends in there. And one of the guys that used to be a moderator in there runs a foundation called Bolus and Barbells. Bolus is when you take a hit of insulin all at once to cover your mealtime carbs and protein kind of thing. And so he does this thing called Bolus and Barbells. He's a power man, strong lifter, and he put together this charity event where all these type 1 athletes got together for a weekend of education, working out, sharing stories, social time, that kind of thing. So I got to meet a bunch of them from that group back in 2017, which was really cool. So
Yeah, no, there's always, it amazes me, the communities that are out there. Again, I'm not sort of in any sort of uh, athletic type community. I haven't I used to be athletic when I was younger, but it's kind of, I go out golfing once in a while, but that's about the most sports I play anymore. But the community's out there, no matter what kind of support that you need, whether it's keto or diabetes or, like it's with the internet these days, you can pretty much find a support group that will merge with any kind of requirements you need.
I never even thought to look on Facebook when I was first diagnosed with type 1. Who knew? And a friend of mine was the one that got me into that first type 2 group. And I was like, Facebook has these type of communities? Who knew? I didn't know that. I joined Facebook after my 20th high school reunion. I just thought it was a way to keep in touch with people. And, once I found that group, I was like, oh, okay. And then when I met Artie Dykman from Type 1 Grit, he's like, oh, I'm going to get you over to the Type 1 Grit group. And I was like, wait, there's more groups on Facebook? Oh, okay. I did not know this. So,
yeah. No, it's great. And I, over the years, I've been keto for almost 5 years now too. And I bounced around between, Two Crazy Ketos was probably the first sort of community type group that I was involved in with keto.
Yeah, I've heard them say that you were around in the early days, so that's really cool.
Yeah, I think I was, because I remember them when they first started doing videos. They used to record them in their car all the time before they moved to the couch kind of thing. And then
right.
I remember the day they started their Facebook group. I think I was the first one into that group as well. So, but
Right.
it's grown. They've got such a huge community that is, so supportive. And it's like, it's not just them, it's all the different channels out there and Facebook communities. And obviously you've seen support from the other groups that you've been part of too. So, and like I say, that's one of the reasons I started my YouTube channel too, was to try and bring together as much information as I could, because I saw what keto did for me. So now this is what I'm trying to do for everyone else, is bring stories like yours to light that, like you're the first guest I've had on with a type 1 diagnosis that you've been able to manage. And this is going to be really valuable information, because even if it's not the person watching that needs the information, maybe it's a loved one of theirs or someone they know that needs the information, right?
I really hope so, because that has been my goal since pretty much once I got my health back under control. It was kind of my goal to help as many people as I could, because I didn't want an adult, and I'm not trying to leave the kids out, because they're kids, they're going to need help. But they have their support group from their parents, from their families. When you're an adult like I was, nobody in my family had type 1. So I was the island here. Nobody knew what they could do to help me, because I didn't even know what they could do to help me. So when there was no support groups there that I could find, when I got my health back, it was my goal to be able to help as many people as I could, answer questions, be able to, especially athletes, but I'm talking just in general. I want to be able to answer their questions, let them know that it's not a death sentence. All you got to do is get your insulin needs under control, try to limit your carbs as much as possible. I have friends that are still, sugar bombers. They eat all the carbs and they lead very healthy lifestyles as well. So keto is not, I always say keto, everybody is right for keto, but keto is not right for everybody, because not everybody can do that diet. It takes some willpower, and you got to have you got to be okay with just saying no to this and no to that, and that's the way it is. I get jealous when I see people say, well, I had a cheat day or I had an off-plan day. I don't get those days. I can't afford to get those days, because I'll be chasing those high blood sugars with insulin for the next 3 days. I don't know if you had seen the mention in that chat about that book, Protein Power. Did you?
I guess I talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one excerpt from that book that talks about how if you follow a low carb dietary plan for a long time, your body's enzymes to break down and to assimilate carbohydrates goes dormant. And
Mhm.
so anybody, not just type 1 diabetics, but anybody that then all of a sudden eats some carbs, it's going to take their body much, much longer to be able to assimilate them, for the insulin to cover them. And you're going to be at a high blood sugar, like for a longer period of time than you normally would be if you
Sure.
eliminated. For me, if I were to say somebody served me a regular Coke instead of Diet Coke in a restaurant, I'm chasing that high blood sugar for the next 2 days minimum.
Mhm.
And, so I don't always go by the labels of what packaged food says. Not that I eat that much packaged food, but if like a bar or something like that, if it says like 8 grams of total carbs, I'm usually dosing insulin for about 12 to 15 because those carbs are going to hit me a lot harder than somebody who normally takes in carbohydrates. So
Sure.
it's just the life.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you, and I think that's important too to um, even someone who's just on a keto diet. Like what I've found with myself is I'm pretty strict as well. I don't have cheat meals or cheat days or any of this stuff and that's not because I worry about blood sugar or anything. It's just my mentality can't afford it. Like I can't just turn it on then turn it off again. Or turn it off and then turn it back on. I have
Right.
to leave my focus the way it is, or I'll wind up right back where I was. But what I have done
Yeah,
in the
totally
last,
get.
yeah, what I've done in the last 6 months or so, because as far as like weight goes and how I'm feeling and all that, I feel great. I'm pretty much where I need to be with my weight. I have added more whole food carbs, mostly like vegetables, and then recently I've started adding like fermented foods, like kimchi and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So they're naturally higher in carbs, right? So I
Mhm.
think it's important to that what you said there is that if you're really strict with no carbs all the time, then if you do eat a higher carb meal or something, then your body has to work a lot harder to process it. Whereas if you consistently are adding some whole food carbs to the diet, then I think it may be easier to handle in the long term. That's my experience with it so far, but like obviously we know everybody's different. Some people thrive on almost zero carb for the rest of their life.
Right.
So
And that's about like where I am. I mean, I'm between 10 and 15 a day. Not that I track, but after 9 years, I can take a look at a plate of food and know exactly within 2 to 3 grams of exactly how many carbs I'm eating kind of thing.
sure,
So,
sure. Yeah, when you have to be hyper focused on what you're taking in, you'd have to learn it pretty quick to make sure you're not making
right.
mistakes. That's for sure.
Yeah. The first year into it, it was like a little more meticulous kind of thing. I was really like tracking a lot of stuff. Back then, though, I mean, it was so weird coming back into it after being out of it for so long because back when I did it was like the modified Atkins. So it was very high protein, low carb as much as possible. When I came back in 2014, it had switched into high fat, low carb, HFLC.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what is this all about? I
Yeah.
didn't understand how it switched from high protein to high fat. I didn't get that. It used to be like eat the protein and the fat that comes with the protein and call it a day. Call it a day.
Hmm.
And then I realized once I did some more research into it, it was more internet. What's the word I'm looking? Internet telephone game. People are like
Hmm.
calling keto. Well, keto is a high fat diet. No, it's not. It's a low carb diet, and then you choose how you want to work the rest of your macronutrients, kind of thing.
Sure,
So,
sure. Yeah, I think the high fat moniker that it got sort of uh, unfortunately the effect of that got a lot of people away from focusing on protein as well. So they were undereating
Oh, when I first got
protein.
back into it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, protein was the devil. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Mhm.
How many people I mean, thank God Amy Berger put out that paper about 5 or 6 years ago on what gluconeogenesis really is.
Mhm.
And it was like a 2 or 3 page paper, and I skimmed through it and I was like, exactly what I thought it was. It was like, you don't
Mhm.
need to fear protein. But everybody I talked to, there was a keto instant pot group where I got into this huge argument with somebody about high protein is not going to raise your blood sugar up into 400. It's not going
Mhm.
to. So,
Right.
unless you have type 1 diabetes and don't dose your insulin for it, that's the only way you're going to get to 400.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was.
Yeah. Like thankfully things have been shifting with different doctors that are coming to the platform, like Dr. Barry, and
Right.
there's lots of people out there pushing, like, fat's still important if you want, because if you're not eating the carbs, you need something for energy. So if you're
Right.
eating low
Absolutely.
carb and low fat, then you're just gonna feel like crap all the time anyway. So, but to ignore protein and just eat fat and low carb is not the answer either. So it's good that lots of people out there have tried, and I think the tide is turning where people understand that they need to prioritize protein and get the fat in for your energy, and then minimize your carbs. But again, it's all individual as well. Everybody
Right.
has different needs, right? So
And that's one thing I had to like open up my mind back up, because I always forget. Like, I always think of keto as a weight loss diet because that's what 98% of the people I see are doing it for. Then
mhm,
you've got the couple percent like me who are type 1 that are doing it for blood sugar management as well as, athletics and stuff like that. I always forgot, or I don't, it didn't forget, but it had to be reminded that this was developed because of people with epilepsy.
mhm,
And I forgot about that, yeah, they need to be on their, for to control their seizures, they need to be on a higher fat protocol. And not
mhm,
everybody does well with the higher protein. So I have to always walk that back in my mind too, that, I'm always the first one to say, no, you need to get your protein in. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Let me ask a couple questions here.
mhm,
So, it's always an educational opportunity for me too, because I do have to remind myself that we're all on a different journey, and I'm always the first one to defend. I'm not on a weight loss journey, but you
mhm.
need to eat protein. Oh, wait a minute. You might be on a different journey. You may not be able to do as much protein as me. Okay. Yeah. Let me talk to you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the amounts are, like, there's always rules of thumb as far as what should work best. But again, like it, and I try to, anytime, it's one of those things too. Like, I don't know if you've probably been to Dr. Barry's live streams and seen 3,000 questions coming through. I don't know how the guy does it. That doing live streams like that would just drive me insane. But
I
even
got
even
to be honest. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
sorry, I was going to say, like, even like Anita last night, we were talking
Mhm.
in her live stream. She does a great job of doing questions and answers and stuff like that. It's just so difficult, when I get questions, and probably the same with you, is that because you can only ever really say, well, this is where you can start. This is to this, then you have to make sure they understand that, okay, well, this is what I did, you know, but this isn't what you're going to do. What you're going to do is you're going to start here, and then you're going to adjust things. Maybe you're going to do better on high fat, or maybe you're going to do better on higher protein. You know, you're, I can't, nobody can sit there and actually say, well, you need this much protein and this much fat and this much carbs, because, well, we can sort of guess, my protein level or intake level is never going to be the same as uh, someone that's, bigger than me, like taller than me or shorter than me, or, we all have different requirements.
Right. Right.
So,
And that's the big thing there. Like with Dr. Bernstein, his protocol is about a 30-gram per day type of thing, 6 at breakfast, 12 at lunch, 12 at dinner. That's assuming somebody eats 3 meals a day. Now, I've been like skipping breakfast since I was in first grade, so that protocol didn't really pertain to me. As time went on, I kind of gradually fell into 1 meal a day by accident, and I get all my macronutrients right in that 1 meal. And when I'm in season, sometimes I'll throw in a second meal. Just depends on how hungry I am. I've learned, you just know your hunger cues, kind of thing. Yeah. So, and then with keto being 20 grams of carbs, or less, kind of thing, you do what you can. You do what you need to do. You listen to your body, and because everybody's going to be different when it comes to that.
Sure. So yeah, so do you do any, like, and again, I don't know what works. Obviously, you're saying that you're been doing 1 meal a day, which a lot of people do that. I could imagine it might be easier to manage the amount or the insulin intake that you need if you're only eating once a day, instead of having to worry about managing 2 or 3 meals a day that way.
Right. Like I said, I kind of fell into 1 meal a day just on accident. I just wasn't hungry after the 1 meal and just kind of noticed it over time. I had seen so many people talking about it, but I never paid attention to like times of day when I ate. I was just like, I'll eat when I'm hungry, kind of thing. I was the eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, long before that was ever like in the keto community, kind of thing.
Sure.
I just, it just made sense to me, is all. But, again, I've been an athlete for, so many years that I've just learned how to tune into my body and know the cues of different things, hunger, pain, whatever, kind of thing. Of course, too bad I diagnosed my own type 1.
Yeah. So do you
But
ever
yeah,
do you ever do any like longer fasting, or is it just you don't worry about doing any of that? You just eat what you need.
I see no purpose of that at all. Just for me personally,
Yeah,
I see no purpose
for sure.
For a 24, 48, 72-hour fast. You want to do it, go right ahead, be my guest. I have no use for it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty much with you there. The most I'll do is, just eat 1 meal a day. Personally, I did that for about a year, and then I was finding myself not being able to eat enough during
Right.
in that 1 meal. So I've actually this year I was the same way. I'm not a breakfast person. I don't typically. I've never eaten in the morning. It's always like noon afterwards, kind of thing. But for the last 3 months or 4 months or so, I've actually been incorporating like a high protein meal in the morning.
Right.
And I'm finding it. I have a lot more energy for the day. And I actually, once I started doing that, I don't snack as much in the evening, because once I've had that meal in the morning and then I have another bigger meal in the evening, I feel I don't get hungry as much that way.
Right.
But again, this all comes back to personalizing things for yourself. One and everything in knowing that it's going to change. Like for you in your situation, you're probably best off to sort of stick with what works best for you. But I think for a lot of people on a weight loss journey, like you say, which 90% of the people on keto are in a weight loss sort of journey, things change over time. So what works for you 6 months ago might not work today. Maybe you find you're in a stall, you still need to lose some weight. Well, this is when you start eating more or start eating less, or but again, that's where it comes back to the whole personalization of the lifestyle.
Right. And the thing is, with me personally, I'm not afraid of change. So I know if I need to make a change, like somewhere in the protocol, kind of thing. When I start the season up in April, my beach volleyball season runs from April. I just had my final tournament of the year last weekend in Santa Barbara. So like when I get into that season, if I need to incorporate more food for fuel, I just do.
Mhm.
And, I don't question it. I don't make any problems in my brain about it. And I just keep it to high protein, very low carb. Most of the time, like when I'm like doing like meals after workouts, it's like protein only. It's just to get the
Mhm.
refill for your body, repair the muscles, that kind of thing. um so, and then it's easier to dose the insulin for that, so I don't have to worry about any carbs mixing in with the bunch. But so I will throw a second meal in on some days during the season because I'm just so much more active, and always on the go. I'm either at the beach or I'm playing in a tournament or whatnot. And then tournament, let's not even talk about that. Let's like, all the fuel that I got to take in on that day. And then still keep an eye on my blood sugars with my CGM. Thank God for the Apple Watch that I can look at my watch and get my numbers on my wrist so I can call a quick timeout if my blood sugar is dropping too low and I need to go get some glucose in me or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I get asked that a lot. What do you do if you have a low blood sugar and you're keto? Which comes first, staying
Yeah,
alive or worrying about ketosis? You're going to
sure.
put glucose in yourself. Thank God for one of my sponsors that I have energy fuel that I can get some quick glucose in me. So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
so you just call a quick timeout and, go get some glucose and you wait about 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and then get back in and play and hope you don't crash.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that would definitely be a balancing act, and I think that's I can just imagine how well. Obviously, after you've done it long enough, and you being in a higher level in sports and and stuff like that, you can uh, you've gotten used to how to manage it. But I can see someone that's just found out about this, like they're an
Yeah.
adult or they haven't gone about it, like I can just imagine, you know, how their world could come crashing down and, thinking, oh, well, this is my life now. Or, obviously
And that's my goal.
it.
That's exactly what I want to do is I don't want somebody to feel the way that I was feeling back in October of 2014.
Mm,
And if I can help them in any way, shape, or form, that's what I want to be able to do. And I mean, I've been very lucky in the last few years. 2018 was the first time I've been a speaker at a few of the Type 1 health conferences, and been on various athlete panels and that kind of thing. I have to kind of walk the line carefully about bringing keto into my talk,
mhm,
but I just keep words. I try to stay low carb as much as possible, kind of thing. I can't use the word keto.
sure.
Um, but it's like I've been able to give talks at diabetes camps for teens and let them know, like, okay, you have diabetes. How many people want to be an athlete? This
Mhm,
is possible. You can do this. It's like, and it's kind of weird because me being an adult, I feel like I connect more with adults that are newly diagnosed than I do with the teens that have been, since they were born or, at a really young age, because I can't speak to my life prior to diabetes and correlate that to these kids that have diabetes in their teens because I can't say that, oh yeah, I competed in the Olympic trials. Yeah, but I didn't have type 1 at the time. It's
mm,
I have to keep it in perspective, like, okay, I was diagnosed at 44 years old, but I got back into competing and I'm still competing at the highest level that I can right now. You guys can do the same kind of thing. Adults, non-athletes kind of thing, I'd rather, be able to speak with them and answer any questions about any fears they might have, how their life, as they see it may change kind of thing, but keep it with kind of a sense of humor too, because that's kind of what got me through it. I called my sports psychologist at the university that I played college volleyball at, and I was like, look, I got nothing here. Could we like talk a little bit? Can we, at the time it was Skype. I'm like, can we Skype, do you think? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So we got talking. He started getting me laughing so much. And thank God for that humor, because, I was at a very down stage at that point in time where, we had some questions about like a lot of things. And
Sure.
he kind of talked me down from the ledge.
Yeah. 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 And I think that it's important, really, no matter what kind of battle you have with your health, regardless of what it is, having people to talk to that, that can be there to do just those things that you need, like the support and the, lightening the mood whenever necessary, and, just getting you through the times. Like we've all, had times, and, if you've gone through anything health related, again, I was lucky. I didn't have anything that forced me to change yet. Right. Like my health wasn't so bad that I had to change my lifestyle. I just, it was my grandkids that sort of pushed me towards it, because I couldn't keep up with them. I'm like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I got to do something to change my life. But, I've heard so many stories of people that have had those health scares that sort of got them into thinking about changing their lifestyle. But I think that one common thing is that you can't do it. You can't do all this alone. Like there's no way you can survive and keep going and keep moving forward by yourself. So you have to find those support groups, and then those one-on-ones with people that understand, might not necessarily know exactly what you're going through, but understand what it takes to keep your spirits up and keep you moving forward.
And for me to be wanting that kind of support, like I've always like done things on my own. Like I have just dealt with things in life on my own, head on, get it done, that kind of thing, get over it. If it's something like, some challenge, it's like, get over it. For me to be looking for a support group of some sort or some piece of support, that's saying something, because this was probably the most challenging thing that I've gone through in life, and I've been through some doozies, and I would put this probably at the top. So
yeah, no doubt. I can just imagine. Like I say, I do consider myself lucky that I, knock on wood, I haven't had any major issues, but it just goes to show that you just never know what's coming down the road, right? So.
Especially autoimmune, because that's the thing that's what type 1 is classified as, is an autoimmune, and an autoimmune can hit you any point, anytime, for any reason. And mine just, I correlate it back to the shoulder surgery that I had, the fourth one that I had. My body was just like, that's it, we're done, and now I'm attacking your pancreas. And, can I prove that? No. But I mean, it's pretty coincidental that, 2 years after a major surgery that like all of a sudden I'm type 1. And then the funny thing about that is 3 months after I got the diagnosis with the type 1, I got a celiac diagnosis. I was in the hospital for 10 days. That's 9 days longer than I was in the hospital for type 1. So that was a weird, like one autoimmune follows the other. So that's the big joke in the community. So
yeah. And that's, I've had sensitivities to certain foods and stuff like that too, and never diagnosed with anything. But that's, again, why at this point in my life, I just focus on doing whatever I can to heal my body. And, hopefully I have enough time left that I can, get my health back to where it should be when I'm this age. So.
Right. Well, that's the biggest thing. I've always been like proactive with my health. I've always like taken care of things prior to when they may happen. I've always, like back in the California days when I was playing on the Pro Tour, taking painkillers before the pain came on, so that way I didn't have to deal with having reaction kind of thing. And so, I've always been proactive with my health. So when it comes to, the keto journey, or I call it carnito, you see, everybody calls it ketovore. I'm like, for me, it's meat versus carnito.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I said that one time in the chat, and Emily from Ready Set Keto was dying. She's like, "Oh my God,
Mm,
that's your superhero name." I'm like, "Sure, we'll go with that."
yeah.
um, but yeah, that's what I consider like this dietary way is it's preventing anything. If you aren't diagnosed with anything, it's preventing from being diagnosed kind of thing.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I look at an ounce of prevention kind of thing.
Sure.
And it's just I don't know. I Here I am like 9 years later. I just passed my 9-year anniversary. So here I
Right.
am 9 years.
Yeah.
You just do
Yeah.
it. All I can do is put one foot in front of the other, and thankful to be back playing sports and willing to help out anybody in the community that needs it, kind of thing. And all my friends who have had type 1 for a lot longer than me, they call me the puppy. When I put on my Facebook, just past my 9-year anniversary. Oh, you're such a pup, aren't you so
Yeah.
cute? And I'm like, yeah, 9 years later, and I'm still the puppy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, sooner or
But yeah,
later there'll be
it's
one
always
that's newer than you.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In the CGM groups, there's always a newbie. But yeah, because in the 2KK group, there's only like maybe I can think of 3 people off the top of my head that are type 1, and then one extra person that's in the Mighty Networks group that I don't
Mm,
know if they're in the Facebook group or not. The Facebook group, though, I know of 3 for sure, myself included, and there may be more, but they've just never really come out and said anything about it. So,
sure. Yeah.
but yeah, we are an underrepresented bunch in that group.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to sort of bring the story to as many people as we can. Joe and Rachel usually let me post notifications in the Facebook group about videos like this, so I can, I can definitely post it there so we can get because again, like people may know you, but might not necessarily know your story. And again, if we can
Right.
get it far and wide kind of thing, so that again, my goal is to help anyone, even if it's one person.
Absolutely.
That's mission accomplished, right? So uh,
Same, totally. If I can
for
help one person not go through that a minute of what I went through back in 2014, I'm all there to help them out,
yeah,
whatever. Navigate those early days, talk to them about technology, CGMs, pumps, which pump is the best out there kind of thing. And, I'm all about that. I welcome anybody to message me.
hmm.
So.
Cool.
That's why I put the defense whiz in there too, because most people know me as defense whiz.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, I won't. It's been a great conversation for sure. Like usually at the end of the podcast, I like to ask people like what they would recommend to people just getting into a keto lifestyle. But I think with it, it almost seems like your message is a lot sort of wider than that. Like I know I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add to that person that may have just got that diagnosis yesterday kind of thing. What would you say is the first sort of step they should take? And then like you've probably hit on pretty much like a big portion of the information they need, but what would you say is the first thing someone should be doing?
The first piece of advice I give to anybody that's diagnosed with type 1 is you got to come to terms with it in your own way as quick as you can, because the minute you come to terms with it, that's when you're going to be able to move forward with it. It took me a long time to come to terms with it. Second thing is you have to get over the fact that you're going to have to be injecting insulin for the rest of your life. Again, kind of stems with the coming to terms with it. If you're going to try to make the jump into a low carb lifestyle, the biggest mistake I see people making, and I made the same mistake back in 2014, I was looking at every single recipe out there. Got to make that, 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 got to make that. And
Mm-hmm.
back then, there were only 2 people involved with low carb recipes online. 3 if you count I Breathe, I'm Hungry. Maria Emmerich and Carolyn Ketchum. They were the only ones, and both of them were in the type 1 group. So like we had firsthand access to them when it came to their recipes before they were ever published online. So so if you're going to come to terms with, or if you're going to go into the low carb lifestyle, you gotta make it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to make every single recipe out there. Just keep everything as simple as possible and worry about the elaborate recipes later, kind of thing. You know, like if somebody is like, I was lucky, I never had a sweet tooth. So when it comes to desserts, there's always the mug cakes. So it's just, you got to drag out all the ingredients to make one little, tiny little cake that's gone in 3 seconds, but that's beside the point. So, but yeah, those are the big things for me. You know, somebody that's brand new, they have to get their mind around it as fast as possible. And if I would have had a little bit more support, I might have been able to do that right out of the gate. But you know, I did it as quick as I could. So
sure, yeah, and I think that, you know, obviously there's more to it with a diagnosis like that, but that's good advice for anybody trying to make a lifestyle change, especially if it's, you know, it's keto and stuff like that. Because I was completely, that's 100% me when I first started keto. It's like, oh, I bake. I never baked a damn thing in my life, and now I was making mug cakes and, you know, like almond flour crust for pies. And it's like, what am I doing? Like, yeah, like I do it now for YouTube, because that's, you know, but the only time I make things like that is for the YouTube channel, right? Like I'm not sitting around eating chaffles every night, because, you know, that's because
back in 2014, it was bulletproof coffee and how many different ways can you make zoodles?
Yeah.
And then 2015 was the rise of the cauliflower. How many different ways can you make cauliflower? Mash, rice, whatever. It's like, whatever happened to just roasted cauliflower mac and cheese? You mean cauliflower gratin, right? So, and then came, you know, all the other stuff, and then 2019, the year of the chaffle kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,